disconnect between the gravity of the international situation and the absolute triviality, narcissism, and delusion that define American political leadership. The United States is sleepwalking into a catastrophe that could end organized human civilization, and it is doing so while its elites engage in a grotesque theater of ego and fantasy that would have embarrassed even the most decadent Roman emperors. I want to begin with an event that many dismissed as harmless seasonal fluff or partisan gossip: Donald Trump conducting Christmas Eve phone calls with children. On the surface, this appears to be a standard political ritual, a sentimental performance designed to project warmth and accessibility. But viewed through the lens of offensive realism and state capacity, what we witnessed was not endearing. It was alarming. It was a symptom of a superpower that has lost its psychological grounding and its strategic seriousness. When a man who seeks to lead the most powerful military force in human history comments on a child's appearance in a manner that raises discomfort while simultaneously being entangled in investigations related to the most notorious trafficking network of the modern era, we are not merely witnessing social awkwardness, we are observing the collapse of discipline. In international politics, perception is power. When the leader of a hegemon cannot maintain basic decorum or situational awareness, adversaries take note. Vladimir Putin is not distracted by performative rituals. Xi Jinping is not improvising fantasies for validation. They are focused on logistics, industrial output, demographic endurance, and strategic leverage. They are focused on survival. Meanwhile, American leadership is consumed by grievance, nostalgia, and self-mythologizing. This is the core pathology driving American decline. The United States currently faces a three-front strategic crisis: a hot war in Europe against Russia, an accelerating Cold War in Asia that risks becoming hot against China, and an increasingly volatile Middle East. Yet American political discourse is dominated by the ego of one man and the hysterical reaction of his enemies. Trump's compulsive need to tell children that he won Pennsylvania in a landslide illustrates the danger. This is not about the lie itself, it is about the inability to accept reality. If a man cannot accept the outcome of an election, how can he accept the balance of power in Ukraine? The United States and its allies have convinced themselves that Ukraine can achieve a decisive military victory against Russia. This belief is delusional. Russia possesses a larger population, a deeper industrial base, and a leadership that views the war as existential. Moscow will not retreat because Western narratives demand it. Just as Trump constructs a personal reality in which defeat becomes victory, the Western foreign policy establishment constructs a strategic fantasy in which Russia can be bled indefinitely without escalation. This refusal to see the world as it is creates a lethal risk of miscalculation. In nuclear politics, miscalculation is fatal. You cannot spin your way out of physics. You cannot gaslight a hypersonic missile. The danger is that American leadership has grown accustomed to a domestic environment where narratives replace facts and applause replace accountability. The international system does not work that way. It is anarchic, unforgiving, and brutally material. Trump's insistence on clean, beautiful coal during those Christmas calls reveals another structural failure. American energy policy is not designed around national resilience or industrial security. It is designed around donor appeasement. A nation engaged in strategic competition with Russia and China cannot afford incoherent energy policy driven by slogans. Energy is power. Energy is leverage. When prices spike due to conflict in the Strait of Hormuz or sabotage in the Baltic, it is not billionaires who suffer. It is working families whose purchasing power evaporates overnight. Trump's pleas to children not to leave their states and his fixation on winning particular regions betray a deeper insecurity: the fragmentation of the American Union. The United States no longer behaves like a unified nation-state. It behaves like a coalition of hostile tribes. A house divided cannot project power abroad, and it cannot contain the rise of a disciplined competitor like China. Beijing sees an America paralyzed by legal warfare, culture conflict, and institutional distrust. It sees a society unable to agree on basic facts. This internal division is the greatest threat to American national security. It is far more dangerous than any Russian missile system. Rome did not fall solely because of barbarians at the gates. It fell because its internal cohesion collapsed. The economic dimension reinforces this decline. Trump boasts of stock market highs and claims inflation does not exist. This reflects elite blindness. Asset inflation benefits the wealthy while eroding the lives of ordinary citizens. Housing, food, insurance, and education costs have exploded. The stock market is not the economy. It is a mirror of monetary distortion and wealth concentration. Tariffs, meanwhile, are sold as free prosperity. In reality, they are tools of economic warfare that impose real costs on consumers. Strategic decoupling from China may be necessary, but it will be painful. Pretending otherwise is deception. The era of globalization is ending. The era of zero-sum competition has returned. Leaders who sell sacrifice as abundance are preparing their societies for shock. The United States is catastrophically overstretched. With over $34 trillion in debt, massive deficits, and an atrophied defense industrial base, American power rests on illusion. The military cannot produce enough artillery shells to sustain Ukraine, let alone fight a high-intensity war in the Pacific. Recruitment is collapsing. The Navy is shrinking while China's expands. Deterrence is eroding. Russia has shattered the European security order. Iran and its proxies are destabilizing the Middle East. China is preparing to challenge the Asian order. This is not strength. This is strategic insolvency. The response from Washington is name-calling, grievance, and spectacle. Political opponents are dehumanized. Institutions are delegitimized. This cycle destroys the legitimacy of the state itself. A government viewed as illegitimate by half its population cannot mobilize for war. Technology oligarchs compound this problem. The digital public square is controlled by private platforms optimized for outrage. Absurdity generates engagement, and engagement generates profit. But outrage is poison to strategy. A society addicted to algorithmic rage cannot think clearly about existential threats. Paranoia dominates discourse. Internal enemies are hunted while external dangers advance. A nation consumed by internal suspicion cannot balance against external powers. Beijing and Moscow understand this. They do not need to defeat America. They only need to wait. Trump's claim that he can end the Ukraine war in 24 hours is another illusion. Structural realities cannot be bargained away. Russia's security interests will not disappear because of charisma. To believe otherwise is liberal fantasy dressed in populist clothing. The Russians have signaled their nuclear thresholds repeatedly. Western leaders treat those signals as bluffs. This is reckless. Nuclear deterrence is not theater. It is arithmetic. It is physics. It is survival. The American holiday from history is over. The unipolar moment has ended. Power now demands discipline, cohesion, and sacrifice. The United States currently possesses none of these in sufficient quantity. The consequences will be severe. A great power war would collapse global trade, trigger rationing, and likely require conscription. This is not speculation. It is historical precedent. You cannot fight industrial wars with volunteer forces alone. Donald Trump is not the cause of American decline. He is its avatar. He reflects a society that values spectacle over competence and narrative over reality. His Christmas message was loud, boastful, incoherent, and beneath it all, profoundly weak. We must recover realism. Nations have interests, not fantasies. Resources are finite. War is blood and iron. If we do not relearn these truths, history will teach them brutally. The next time you hear a politician speak, ignore the insults and tone. Examine the policy. Ask whether it increases power, cohesion, and survival, or whether it is merely noise from a dying empire. Thank you for listening. The days ahead will offer no shortage of evidence that these warnings were not exaggerated. Please keep your eyes open.